Hi, everybody. I am here with Kerstin Wheeland. We just got through with the Teach Better chat. Hello, Kerstin.
Hey, Becky.
Good to have you here. Thanks, anybody who is watching, for joining us. And I will introduce Kerstin in a minute. But first, we will go to. I was telling Kerstin about this. This is like our little commercial break. It's like our live show, and we're going to commercial break first. So we will be right back. There is a lot of good stuff packed into that less than 1 minute little promo there. And we will talk more about that, Kerstin, in a little bit, because before we went live, you and I were just chatting about, your connection to the Teach Better team and my connection to the Teach Better team. So we will discuss that in a little bit. But first, I would love for you to take a few minutes and introduce yourself.
All right. So I'm so sorry, Becky. I should have told you earlier, but my name's actually pronounced Kerstin.
I'm
Wheeland.
sorry. I'm
Sorry.
sorry,
Nope, that's my
Kerstin.
fault. My name's Kerstin Wheeland. I am a sixth grade math teacher in Columbia, South Carolina. This is going into my 6th year of teaching, and I'm doing 6th grade. So you know how golden year birthdays are a thing? I'm hoping that golden teaching years are a thing too. I love what I do. I just love what I do. I have a great team, great school. And
Well, you were telling me, because this wasn't your first position, correct? Teaching. And so you were kind of telling me that during the whole COVID lockdown, things were transitioning for you, right?
Right. So I'm from Florida. I did 4 years of 4th grade there before transitioning. I actually came up to South Carolina to see my now husband for spring break. Ended up staying the entire time and taught my Florida 4th graders from South Carolina. So that was quite interesting. And since moving, I've taken my 6th grade math position here. And so it's been an interesting transition going from elementary to middle, and then from Florida to South Carolina, and from normal school years to COVID school years. So
Have you officially started yet this school year or not yet?
Teachers went back on Monday, and the students are coming back next Wednesday.
Okay. And so
So
far, so good, knock on wood, everything appears to be, you'll be in buildings, everything starting out normal.
we'll see, Becky. We'll see. You know how they like to tell us one thing, and then the next day it's something different. So we're just going with the flow.
Yeah, yeah, and I've already seen some articles coming out, so I'm, like, reading, like, kind of with
Yeah,
one eye open. I'm like, "I don't really wanna see what's going on." So,
yeah.
that's awesome. So, I really, of course, having been a math teacher, I really enjoyed, this topic, and this topic doesn't just apply to math, and so it was good to see that there was a lot of language arts teachers chiming in, and, teachers with other specialty areas as well. And I love that, you kind of termed it EOL, which I had not seen before. So I was like, oh, this is new to me. So evidence of learning. And so I just wanted to kind of go through the questions and some of the answers, because we got a lot of really great ideas. And I'm sure you were pretty impressed with some people's answers too. So we can talk about those for a little bit. So your first question was, what are your favorite methods for capturing evidence of learning? And were there any answers in particular that stood out to you? I mean, I saw a lot of the same themes, so I'm just curious what you saw.
I agree. I saw a lot of people talking about portfolios. A lot of people were talking about student reflections, journaling. Um, Pre-assessments, post-assessments, the pre-tests were interesting too. I think personally, I think it is great when you consider evidence of learning. You want to see where were they before and where are they now. But with, COVID, and we're losing so many days, and with the pressures of pacing, pre-assessments can often be something that gets put on the back burner. But it is something that definitely impacts your evidence of learning,
Yes.
which kind of ties in with one of our later questions. So I don't want to say too much, but we need to know where they were to show their actual evidence of learning, if that makes sense. So,
100%. The other thing I saw mentioned quite a bit was conferencing.
mm-hmm.
And just meeting with students and getting to know them. And what's nice about that is that kind of brings in that ties in that personal element, or that, developing relationships element, which I think is super important. But I think, the main thing for me was seeing a lot of people saying that there needs to be a variety of evidence of learning. It shouldn't just be one or two things. It should be, multiple things, including your observations, obviously, in the classroom. I was just, I chimed in that one of the things that I was using last year was something called whiteboard chat, which was introduced to me. And I know somebody else mentioned like Go Formative. And so those
Mm-hmm.
are specific tools, but it was fascinating to me to see. And given that we had to be distanced and there were some people who were remote and some people who were in person, I was able to kind of see what they were doing at the same time. And you can kind of like join their boards and chime in and say, okay, well, I can see that this might be a problem or this might be a problem, and who was getting it right away. So, those were great specific tools, like I said, and there are plenty of others, but it's nice to be able to have those now, where a couple of years ago you didn't have any of that.
Absolutely.
So your second question was, how do you use student work samples to plan? What were some of your favorite answers from this question?
I loved Jeffrey Austin's answer. I took some screenshots of some of my favorite ones, so if you see me looking off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, because he included those visuals there, and I feel, student work samples, that was something that was introduced to me by maybe 4 principals ago. Um, and he said, when we do our collaborative planning, we should be bringing student work samples to planning. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because we'd never actually done it, and it sounds nice. But when you have teachers who are sitting around together and they are physically, if it's paper or if it's virtual, because we have to go virtual, but there's something about actually having that work in front of you and being able to analyze it. And that's where I brought in like the grouping. Like we'll bring a few different things that we're noticing. We'll start grouping them. What are the commonalities?
Yeah.
What does this tell us? And then we're getting into what you described, which is the responsive teaching.
Mm-hmm. And I think actually what you just mentioned, which is very interesting, is, sitting down with other colleagues, and especially if you have colleagues that are teaching, whether it's exactly like literally at the same time teaching what you are, but you're all teaching in theory the same concepts at the same grade level. So it is interesting. And sometimes, other teachers, based on their experience level, can pick up things or kind of, identify the miscommunication that a student has. So they might see an answer and you're like, where did this come from? Which we've all been there, right? You're always like, where did this answer come from? And sometimes, a colleague, if you can't see it, a colleague can pick up on what that misconception is, because they've seen it
Absolutely.
before. So it is nice. And I think that's a great thing that you mentioned, is just kind of like, unfortunately, sometimes planning time doesn't allow for that. But in theory, it is really nice to be able to sit down with colleagues and kind of go through different work samples as well. Yeah, and I saw, which I had also, kind of used myself this past year, was, Google Forms.
Mm-hmm.
And using that for quick feedback. But one of the things that I made it a point to do, and it's definitely time consuming, especially depending on how many students you have, but it's one thing to give them something to show a sample on, whatever that is, but you really have to sit there and analyze it. And
Right.
that's time consuming. But that's where the planning comes in, right? I mean, it's like if you're just giving it to them to give it to them, it's, that's not doing anybody any good.
Exactly, Becky. And that feedback should be two-way. And I feel like we're so used to, as teachers, our focus is on, we need to give quality feedback. We need to give timely feedback. And yes, that is true. But also this student work is the feedback that they're giving to us on our teaching. Absolutely.
You're right. You're right. And even conferencing with students and saying, what can I help you with more? Or what can I do, better? Because it's easy to lose sight of, what it's like to be a 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, when you're an adult, but that is super important. So the third question you had was, how do you incorporate rigor? And this was one of my favorite questions. What was your favorite question, by the way? I mean, I haven't gotten to the fourth question yet, but do you have a favorite question that you asked?
I think the first one my favorite one would be the first one. I just love seeing people using those different formats. This one was one, I got to be honest, when I decided to choose this topic, I was like, all right, what's something I want to know more about? What's something I haven't seen a lot on? And so I started researching, and I was like, evidence of learning. Like, I researched hashtags on Twitter, and I was like, I haven't seen any good, like, quality evidence of learning stuff for a couple of years now on Twitter. Most of it was from 2019, a few here and there from 2020. So I was interested to see what people had to say. Rigor is one of those words that people are like, that's a buzzword. It can be a bad word when your principal's like, rigor, rigor, rigor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious how people would react to this one. I knew this one would be a little bit of a debate. Yeah, what did you think, Becky?
I thought, and I agree with you. And I think, well, pre-pandemic, it was one of those kind of, I don't want to say taboo words, but, it was overused. It was definitely overused. And, now I think that, if you look at it, like, everybody kind of paused during the pandemic to, because you were kind of instructed, like, well, don't push too much because of everything that was going on and everything that still is going on. I don't want to downplay it like we're out of the woods here, but I think slowly but surely now people are trying to kind of reincorporate a little bit more rigor into their planning. And so that's why I thought this was a really good question, because it's very timely. How do you incorporate rigor? And even if you're not doing it, do you know how to do it? Because that's, there's a difference between knowing what you're supposed to do and actually doing it. So I did think it was a great question. I thought some of the answers I saw were the grid method, which you could talk about in a minute. Giving voice and choice, which is certainly important on many levels, not just for rigor, but I think that when you do that, you tend to get a little bit more out of the students than you normally would. Pushing them, kind of gently pushing them. And the other answer I saw, which I thought was really interesting too, was just having them reflect. Having them reflect on their work, because, I think even the best of students can still be pushed to say, okay, how could you have done this differently? Not necessarily better, but how could you have done it differently? And just kind of getting that thought process going. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. That creation, people were talking a lot about, I saw some mentions on project-based learning, open-ended tasks, basically a lot of student creation with what is the product that our students are making, and then involving them in that design process as well, which is something that I think is so interesting about the grid method. When you look at, levels 4 and 5, when we start to get on that independent study, students are submitting project proposals, things of that nature. That is where we're seeing true higher rigor, not just more work and, things that give rigor a bad rap.
That's right. That's right. Now, you had shared with me before we went live that you are going to be trying the grid method for the first time this year.
Yes. So I don't know. I was telling you, Becky, I'd been following the Teach Better team and participating in Mastery Chat a lot. In fact, my muscle memory started to kick in during the Twitter, and I was like, #Mastery. Ooh, not Mastery Chat anymore. But anyway, so yeah, after it's been a few years
Mhm.
of following this team, and I kept seeing grid, and I'm like, oh, flip grid, and the
Yeah.
grid method. So it took me honestly maybe like 5 years before I finally was like, you know what, I'm just gonna see what this is all about. And so I took the courses, I did the research, and I'm like, wow, this is incredible. Like, I wish I would have invested some time into researching this sooner. So I'm really looking forward to delivering the units to my students using the grid method this year. And I'm going to start off with a beginning of the year grid, if you will, and Ray's grids that she shared. Luckily, she is also sixth grade math, so hers
Yes.
are like pretty in line with what we're doing. So yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna model grids after somebody, she's the person to model them after.
Yes. So
That's awesome. You will definitely have to like kind of check back in, and maybe if you have time, go live on a daily drop-in,
yeah.
just to update everybody on kind of how it's going, after the first
Yeah.
grid or so. That's awesome. So the last question was, what characterizes true evidence of learning? And what you had already mentioned, which was really like students asking questions. So, students after the whole process is done, kind of inquiring further or inquiring more. I thought that was, a great answer, as well as what you had said, which was like student created projects and being able to kind of take that learning and then take it to the next level on their own.
Right. Kate also elaborated on that. And she was talking about, not only joy and sparking like an interest, but their transferable skills, which I think is something very important. Often we're just focused on, oh, are they retaining it? Are they retaining it? Can they transfer those skills? Can they transfer what we're learning? Oftentimes we can get hung up on, oh, we're going to do this format, where I'm going to teach my students how to do this type of problem, and they don't have that transference of thinking, so they can't take the concept and apply it in different formats necessarily. So I think that shows that definitely is a really great way to describe evidence of learning, in my opinion.
100%, and it's higher level, and it's I distinctly, what you're talking about, that is a box on my report card, like when you have to check the comments. You can fill in your own, but you can also check these boxes, and one is that you're able to transfer the skills that you've learned, and apply them to other areas. So do you do, or have you done, what are some of the evidence, what are some of your favorite evidence of learning,
Okay.
things that you've done?
Things that I've done. So I agree, what we talked on, to kind of circle back to the beginning of our discussion here, the pre-assessment and the post-assessment. So something that I like to do is I'll give my students, and this is math, so it's kind of cut and dry, but
Yeah.
I'm just going to use it as an example. Let's say I'm teaching a lesson on adding decimals, right? So I give my students on their little note sheet or in their notebooks, I'll give them a problem inside of like a box, and I'll give them a black pen and just say, all right, everybody, before we do anything today, I want you to just solve this problem with your black pen so they don't erase it. And after that, I'll be like, all right, we're done. We're moving on. Like, forget about the problem for now. We'll go through, we'll talk about what they did. We'll do our discovery learning. And then after the lesson is done, which, it's not always just one day. It might span over a few. I'll have them, because they cover up the problem. They cover up the problem with a Post-it note. We're done with it. We're not looking at it, right? After the lesson's over, they'll go back with a red pen. They'll uncover the Post-it note, and they'll look at the work that they've done at the beginning. They'll go through with a red pen and see if they double check, if they agree, they double checked it, everything looks good. Maybe they'll go in and add some labels to articulate their learning and add to it, or they'll go in and they'll change it. And so there you have a clear before and after snapshot. And then to kind of also process what they've done on that sticky note, which is now to the side of the problem. They will kind of like sum up what they learned, or what the, mathematically, some of our concepts are very procedural. So maybe like the steps to the problem were just summarize what they've learned. So that's
I
like,
love that. And I love the post-it. And I can imagine, having taught this age group, that it's very difficult for them not to, they want to know if they got the answer right or wrong right away. And
right,
so to kind of get them in the mindset that it doesn't matter, and you're going to cover it over with a post-it note, not looking at that, in and of itself, I know, is like, takes a little bit of training, right? Like takes a little bit of
right,
like training their brains. Like, it's okay if it was wrong initially, that's kind of why we're here.
right.
So that's I really like that. I like that idea a lot. And I like that, I never really thought about that, but you're like, put it in pen, because as
Yeah.
math teachers we're always taught to put it in pencil, use pencil, but you're having to put it in pen so that they can't erase their answer, which is brilliant, actually.
There have been years where Becky, I don't even allow pencils in my classroom. I'm like, get the pencils out of here, because you guys, the fourth graders, and more so the sixth graders, they're like, oh no, she can't see that. I'm like, that means you're learning. That's showing me
Yeah.
that you're learning,
Yep.
in
Yeah.
the
It just goes to
self-correction.
show you how ingrained they are, in that they have to get the answer right to start. And that's just we
Right.
talk a lot about that, like, as a society, that needs to stop. So I don't know if I see if we're still live here, if we still have a connection, hopefully. But I've even talked to my language arts teachers, that I work with. They say they can give a pre writing prompt and then do a post one and get the same thing. So I think we may have lost connection. So Kerstin, it was great to chat with you. It was a great chat tonight. Thank you for everything. And it was very productive. Got a lot of great ideas. So thank you so much. And we are going to go to break. And thank you, everybody, for watching. And oh, is she back? Hold on. Let's see.
Sorry about
Are
that.
you back? Okay, that's okay. I was just saying, actually, oh, Flagler College, I know where that is. I was just saying that, like, my language arts counterpart would tell me she'd do something similar. She'd give like a writing prompt, just to see what they could do. And then after like doing all those, and like we said, math is a little more cut and dry, but for writing and teaching all those writing skills, and then she'd see like kind of a post, how they did. So it can be done for any subject, but it was awesome to chat with you. Kerstin, sorry about that. And I really wish you the best of luck starting your new school year. And we want you to come back, as I said, and fill us in on how the grid method is working for you.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
All right. And you can follow her you are at the @ more math please, whether it's on Twitter or on Instagram. She's also on Instagram. So thanks everybody for watching. Have a great night.
Bye.